Alright, today we're going to be removing and cleaning the Grate motor. It's a good idea to do it while you have the Auger motor out of the way. Makes it a lot more accessible, easy to get to. Alright, first you want to make sure your stove is unplugged from the wall. Next we'll follow the two leads that go to the motor to give it power. We'll remove those, we'll label them. Alright, once you've disconnected and properly labeled those two wires that power the Grate motor, we'll take a 1/4 inch ratchet and a 1/4 inch socket. We'll remove these two 1/4 inch screws that hold the Grate motor bracket to the actual pellet stove frame. Alright, now with those two 1/4 inch screws removed, we'll be able to move it to the left a little bit to get a better angle. So we'll take that 1/4 inch ratchet again, we'll use a 5/16 short socket, and we're going to remove those top two bolts that hold the motor to the actual bracket. Alright, so we removed those top two 5/16 bolts that hold the motor to the bracket. Next we're going to remove the bottom two. For this I find it easier to take a long 1/4 inch extension, put your 5/16 socket on the end. We'll slide it in from the right end of the stove, right onto the bolt. We'll be able to turn the ratchet full turns outside. That way it's making it a lot easier to remove that bottom two bolts. Alright, now that we removed those four 5/16 bolts that hold the motor to the bracket, we can work on removing the motor. We're going to hold this bracket towards the back of the stove while pushing the shaft towards the front, so that way the cam on the motor will line up with the hole in the bracket to slide it out. Once we get it out, we can properly clean and lubricate it. Alright, so we got our motor removed and on the bench here. So next we're going to take our air compressor, we'll blow it off, get rid of the loose stuff. Then we'll take our degreaser, we'll spray it onto a rag as we don't want to spray the motor down. So we'll spray it onto a rag, we'll wipe down, try to get the heavier stuff off using our rag and our degreaser. Alright, now that we got our motor degreased and cleaned, we're going to use our 3-in-1 oil and we're going to lubricate the motor. Alright, now that we got that motor out cleaned and lubricated, we're going to work on cleaning the stove side. So we're going to take our shop vac, vacuum up the bigger debris like loose pellets. And then after that we're going to take our degreaser, clean down this whole area. Keep in mind when you're done you want to feel these edges of this horseshoe bracket front and back, as that's where the cam rides from the motor. That's what moves it forward and back. Want to make sure there's no burrs on there. If there is, we can take a Scotch-Brite pad or a little piece of sandpaper, sand it down. Want to make sure it's smooth so that way the motor doesn't bind and it'll turn with ease. Alright, so we got the stove side cleaned out now. So we're going to work on lubricating this horseshoe bracket right here that rides on the cam to move the shaft forward and back. We're going to use our CRC dry graphite lube. We're going to spray this horseshoe piece here. We're also going to spray the cam on the motor. That way they're both coated and it'll reduce friction. Alright, now that we've got our stove side cleaned and lubricated, we're going to reinstall the motor. We want to make sure this dimple is towards the back of the stove. We're going to slide the cam through the bracket of the motor while pushing the shaft forward against the spring. Make sure the horseshoe bracket we just lubricated is on both sides of the cam. That way it'll pull it forward and back and work properly. Alright, so now that we got our motor through the bracket and onto our cam, we're going to take our 4 5/16 bolts, reinstall those next, get them finger tight. Next we're going to take our 1/4 inch ratchet and our long extension, slide it through, tighten the bottom two up. Then we'll use just the socket part to tighten the top two. Alright, now that you got those 4 5/16 bolts in and tightened that hold the motor to the bracket, we're going to take our 1/4 inch ratchet and our 1/4 inch socket. We're going to tighten these two screws that hold the bracket to the pellet stove frame. Alright, so with those two 1/4 inch screws tight, we're going to take the two leads that power our motor, run them back behind the room fan like they were originally, and reconnect them to the terminal block. Alright, with those two leads from our Grate motor hooked up back to our terminal, that's it for the Grate motor. It's properly cleaned and lubricated for another heating season. You can work on reinstalling your Auger motor assembly.